Namaskar to all of you. In lieu of a prayer, Mangalacharan, I'll show you this map of India within its neighborhood, within her neighborhood. This is a very interesting map. So as you can see, this is our India, this area. And if you look behind, you have this huge, unimaginably wide wall of Himalayas, which covers India from three sides. And below that, there are vast expanses of ocean. This part is almost uncrossable. There are some passes in this region from where most of the invaders of past about whom we talk too much tried to enter India. But these passes were always defended when India was well functioning. These passes were always well defended. Elevation will be somewhat lower in this side also, but this area it's impossible to cross through because the rains are so heavy and the forests are so thick. There wouldn't have been a possibility there have been not any people coming from this side into India. It's only from these passes here somewhere that people could enter India from Alexander onwards. Till the advent of modern shipping, it would have been impossible for somebody to think of invading India from the sea. So the country is created like a fortress, naturally created like a fortress. I won't emphasize this because in our school texts we keep teaching as if this country was open all the time to invasions from outside. It was physically impossible, naturally impossible for too many outsiders to enter this fortress. In fact, there are some geography books of the early 20th, late 19th century, which will say that India, from its geographical position, is like an island with the dimensions of a subcontinent. It's that isolated from the rest of the landmasses in the world. Within this, if you look at this map, there is elevation hardly ever rises very much. That is almost below the Himalayas is all plains except for some low mountains of the central India. There is really no big physical barrier that separates this Akhanda Bharat, the whole of India, is not separated by any natural barrier. It is all connected. In fact, taking a train from Delhi to Chennai, you'll see as if you're all the time passing, except when you pass through the forests of the central India, it's as if you're all the time passing through a fertile plain. This map has impressed geographers. There's one who writes that when you look at the relief map of India, you find it looks like that this old man, Himalaya as an old aged man, is holding its daughter in its outstretched arms. And all that kind of similes has always been given about the relationship between Himalayas and this country. And that relationship is very interesting. One of the things geologists say is that this Himalayas, of course, as you can see, this is the northern boundary of India. And so it is as much of India as of Tibet or China. But what they say is that the bounty of Himalayas is all reserved for India. That all the water that falls on the northern or southern slopes of the Himalayas is all flows into India. The other side is a desert. That's so it's a very interesting land that has been given to us. This is the map of the cultivated area of India, and as you can see that almost all of India seems potentially cultivable. Leave out this Thar and Little and the Himalayas. There is no part of India which is not cultivable, and that is why there's no part of India where life is not possible. Most other countries will be one corner which will be cultivable. So there will be hinterland and there will be the civilizational small region. But India is, because all of it is cultivable, all of it is fertile, all of it is the center of civilization. It's not there is some one part which is civilized and it is civilized others. It is geographically not like that. It's geographical. There are other very important parts of aspects of the geography of India, which somehow we should be always teaching to our children. One of them, let me point out, is that India is a land where almost everywhere the plants can grow throughout the year because there is sunlight throughout the year. Most other countries, geographers count that in a year, how many days are the days of sunlight, and how many days in a year the plants can grow, the crops can grow. In India, you don't have to count. It is everywhere almost. The whole year is the year of life, the year of growth. I've given some figures here that what is now India is the geographical area is 329, out of which 170 million hectare, 17 crore hectare is cultivable. And if you take whole of India, including what is now Pakistan and Bangladesh, then out of 423 million hectares, 210, which means about 50% of Indian lands are cultivable, which number you will not find anywhere in any large land mass. It's just not possible. China is 956 million hectares, much vaster than India. But the cultivatable area will be only 122 million hectares. USA is 983 and cultivable area will be only 154. Russian Federation is 1,710 million hectares, cultivable area will be 124. And these are the land masses with which India can be compared. It cannot be compared with any other. There's no other land which is larger than this, which is large enough to be compared with India. And amongst these, India has the largest. So the geographers used to say that the area of Indian Union is perhaps 5th or 6th, area of India, not Indian Union, is perhaps 5th or 6th in the world. But in terms of its prosperity, in terms of its wealth, it is not 5th or 6th. It is amongst the topmost in the world. Now, this is the prosperity which is given to us. What we make of it at any given time is what we do with it. But in most of history, Indian people have taken this bounty very gratefully and have worked with it very well. For most of history, India would have remained the most prosperous, most wealthy country of the world. And that is something which is not hyperbole, because in numbers it can be established. Because you have such uniformity of geography and you have such prosperity within an isolated geographical region, it is natural that a uniform, intense culture will develop there. And this has always been noticed by scholars who came to India, that India has a very special civilization, very special culture, which is different than anybody else, and which is also uniform across the country. So I'll quote only one of the major demographers of our times. There's this. This is a quote from Kingsley Davis, of not very old, 1951. Kingsley Davis is considered the first modern demographer of this region. It's a very important demographer in Los Angeles. He, while writing about the demography of India, Pakistan and Bangladesh, at that time there was no Bangladesh when he wrote this book, India and Pakistan, he says that, I'll just read it out. Indian ideas and institutions taken as a whole resemble those of no other people. They have a peculiar shape and flavor of their own. They have tended to transform and absorb any foreign elements that trickled into the region. For India, though politically conquered by outsiders, was never culturally conquered. This peculiar culture has to some degree penetrated and pervaded nearly every part of what is geographically India. It has everywhere been affected by local indigenous variations, but neither the geographical nor the social barriers inside the subcontinent have been sufficient to prevent the widespread diffusion of a common basic culture which, despite great variations, is peculiar to India. This was the experience almost of every great scholar, every traveler who came to India, that they have come to a different land which is separate from others, and which is from the beginning to the end that they walk through. Everywhere is the same as in front. There may be people wearing different clothes, eating different food, but everywhere you can sense that you are in India and not anywhere else. I think what I have quoted may have been the last quote of this kind of a scholar, because after 50s, 60s, we tried to create an image as if India is a very disparate land where only heterogeneity matters and the homogeneity of this country is not important at all. That's what we started emphasizing, and the foreigners also started doing this. There is, of course, everybody knows, with such a large landmass, there will be heterogeneity, there will be peculiarities of different regions. People, different areas will have different language. But all that is happening within an overarching homogeneity. That understanding, which even the foreigners always felt and we always knew, has somehow been lost in our modern education, in our modern period of India. It perhaps was persisted up to my feeling is, if Kingsley Davis could write in 1951, it will be persisting at least up to independence. And this uniqueness that people are talking about is anchored in what we know as Sanatana Dharma, the Dharma which is inborn within Indian land. Even all Indians, even those who came to India from outside, have tended to follow it. The few foreigners that crossed India from India with Alexander of Macedonia onwards have always marveled at the natural richness and civilizational homogeneity. You read Aryan once again, the campaigns of Alexander. The kind of homogeneity, kind of specialness about India that Aryan is ascribing is worth reading. And many of those who came from outside soon merged into the homogeneous Indian civilization in Milo. Many of them who were the most successful became great devotees of Sanatana Dharma and took Sanatana Dharma beyond the given boundaries of, we can name names, and so it is our understanding that this homogeneity persisted till the Islamic rule was established in the heart of India in 1192. 1192 can just be defined as the year in which the homogeneity broke, when Prithviraj Chauhan lost and Islamic rule was able to establish itself in the heart of India at Delhi. And they were perhaps the first rulers, first people who came from outside, who were intent on keeping a separate identity. That all others merged with the Melo, people who came. But this was a group that resisted acculturation almost dogmatically. And this group became the first source of heterogeneity in India. After they were about to leave, or they were about to be subordinated, the British came. And British, through their patronage and propagation of Christianity, created a second source of heterogeneity in India. But more than Christianity, they added to the heterogeneity by suppressing and negating the civilizational homogeneity of India. They began teaching us that this homogeneity is fake. It is heterogeneity which defines India. And we believed them. And I think the larger contribution or larger error of the British in India is not so much the introduction of Christianity, which has been contained to a large extent, as we will see, but the fact that they instilled skepticism about the efficacy and truth and uniqueness of Indian civilization amongst us in the Indians. So this is by way of introduction, because in India we always place any work that we do in the space and time where we are doing that work. So this is the space and time about which the figures that will follow belong to. While looking at the demographic figures of India, we have divided the Indian population to three large groups. One is Christians, the Muslims, and all the rest we are calling Indian religionists. We have had trouble with that term, but this has largely become now accepted the world over, this term Indian religionists. This means the people belonging to religion that were born in India, that took root in India, as against religions which came from outside. And this will include, of course, Buddhists and the Hindus, Buddhists, Jains, and almost all of the tribal, what we call as the tribal religions, and the Sikhs. Okay. This is a religious profile of India, which includes the Pakistan and Bangladesh, the India which was till 47, from 1881 to 2011. And if you look at it, in 1881, what we are calling Indian religionists formed 79% of the population. They have been declining continuously, and now they form, in 2011, the number is 67.25%. From year to year, the decline is of 12 percentage points. Correspondingly, the Muslims have gone up from being less than 20% to nearly 31%, which is a rise of about 11 percentage points. And Christians have gone up from being less than 1% to around 2%. Now, I think if you want to know about what has happened to India, then this one table is enough. That in this 130 years of modernity, the mainstream civilizational group of this country has declined its share, has lost its share by 12 percentage points. This is a very unusual happening anywhere in the world. It has happened in recent times in parts of Africa, but that we'll talk about some other time. That it's not comparable to what has happened here. If I just to give you how big this figure is, at the time of Jahangir, it is said, and Jahangir himself quoting his father says this, that the percentage of Muslims in India at that time, in India which came under their rule, which was not all of India ever, at that time was no more than 1 in 6, which will be around 16%. And to arrive that figure of 16% Muslims, it had taken them at least 500 years from the time of the defeat of Prithviraj Chauhan to Jahangir is already nearly 500 years. It took 5 centuries of medieval period to reduce the Hindu population by 16 percentage points. It has taken just about a century of modernity to reduce the share of Indian religious population in India by 13 percentage points, 12 percentage points. It's a very large, very major change. And it's a continuing change. You see that between 1881 to 1941, the decline is from 79 to 74. And from 51 to 2011, the decline is of another 7 percentage points. It's actually rising decline rather than constricting decline. That's what is happening. And because we looked at it, we just simple-mindedly, not we did a simple-minded extrapolation that since we have these 13 points of data on the share of Indian religionists and of others, if we extrapolate it, we have done it with every census we have been doing it, it always comes that around 2061, 71, in the Indian region, not in the India that we politically hold today, but the Indian region, including Pakistan, Bangladesh, Indian religionists will become a minority. And this extrapolation may not be very good and is not how the demographers do these things. But if you look at the data systematically, this seems very reasonable presumption to make that if not in 2061, maybe 2071, maybe 2081, but within a foreseeable future, in the undivided India, Indian religionists are going to become a minority. That is if no major catastrophe occurs, because as we'll see, there are parts of India where the Muslims and Christians have acquired very high presence. And if those parts, that phenomena becomes faster, then this may come nearer. So this is one, I think, most important thing I want you to concentrate on, that this India that we know has lost, Indian religionists in this area have lost 12 percentage points of their share in the census period. Census starts from 1881 and it is coming. Now if I look at these 2-3 units into which India has been broken, in Indian Union there were 87% nearly Indian religionists in 1901. And at the time of partition, just before the partition census was done, they had come down to 84%, about 3 percentage points they had lost. This, when partition took place, there was this large-scale transfer of populations. So the share of Indian religionists in what is now India became 87%. And after that, it has been quickly and steadily declining. It is now 83%, which is less than what it was before partition. So as far as this remaining India is concerned, whatever were the gains of partition, of the transfer of population, they have been already neutralized. It's not that it will happen in future. They were already neutralized in 2001. So within this, if we look from 51 to 2001, within this, the Muslim has gone from 10.45 to 14.23%. And if you can notice, the much of this rise is in the after 1981. There's something happening after 1981 that the rise in Muslims becomes much higher than what it was. There was, I think, that effect of partition persisted for the beginning 2-3 decades, and after that the community has become as virile, as vital as it was before partition. But let me look at the other two countries also. In Pakistan, there were 16% Indian religionists in 1901. They had become 20% in 1941, before the partition. This increase is there. And this is the only region where Hindus and Sikhs were rising compared to the Muslims. And part of the reason is that the British had decided that anything they do with agriculture or irrigation, they will do in West Punjab and not in East Punjab. They'll do it in Pakistan. And for catering to that increased irrigation, large number of Sikhs and Hindus were moved to those areas. And after partition, this was reduced to 1.59%. This is like zero because these numbers are immaterial. These counts don't matter. And it has remained around that figure throughout after that. So as far as Pakistan is concerned, it is out of bounds for the Indian religiousness. Now they are, this area no more belongs to them. If you look at Bangladesh, there were 34% in 1901 in the Indian list. They were a little less than 30%. And 30% is a large number in 41. And in 51, they got reduced to 23%. So the expulsion from Bangladesh part of Pakistan was not as total as it was from the West Pakistan part of Pakistan. We know the reasons, we know the history of this part. But after 51, this 23% has been continuously, systematically expelled from Bangladesh, and the latest figure is now 9.3% in 2011. This again is a very big change to happen in peacetime. This is not partition, this is not war. That in this small country of Bangladesh, some group of people who form 23% of the population are now forming less than 10%. My personal understanding is that if it happened to any other people in any other part of the world, it would have been the scandal of the world. But this is something that the world doesn't talk about, and we also don't talk about much. But this is not a small thing to happen. Now, over time, maybe another 2 decades, another 3 decades. In Bangladesh, the situation will be very similar to what happened. In Pakistan, it happened in one go. Here it has happened over 40, 50, 60 years, but it will happen. So Pakistan and Bangladesh both are regions which are out of bounds for the mainstream civilizational people of what is India. From this onwards, I am talking only about the India that's left, the Indian Union I normally call it. And these are the growth rates of different communities in the Indian Union after 51. So Indian religions grew 21% in the first decade. their rate of growth kept on increasing a little, became 24%. That was the maximum in 71-81. And from 71-81, there has been systematic decline. Now it is less than 17%, the rate of growth of Indian religionists in Indian Union. In fact, we talked a lot about Indian population becoming too much in the 60s and 70s. Much was talked about. But the figures indicate that there was growth in the first 3 decades, and after that, the rates of growth had started coming down. Muslims, they grew 24% in the first decade, 31% in the second, 30% in the third decade, 33% in that. After 81-91, there is some decline. But what is noticeable is that the gap between the growth of Indians and Muslims, Indian religionists and Muslims, in 51 was only of 3 percentage points. The gap now is of nearly 8 percentage points, and it had risen to nearly 10 percentage points. And in relative terms, this is as big as this, because that they are growing something like 50% more than the Indian religionists, even now. And here also, in fact, here they were increasing 40% more than the Indian religionists. Now they are rising 50% more than the Indian religionists. So this gap, this is only graph of the growth rate of the Muslims and growth rate of Indian religionists. The growth rate of Indian religionists start going down from 71-81 and is sharply coming down. Growth rate of Muslims had gone up to, it was continuously rising, had gone up to 33%. It has started declining, but this gap remains very wide. It is unlikely to be bridged anytime. It doesn't look like that it will be. There's another way of looking at this, to look at the number of children per 100 of population for different communities. And in 2001, Indian religionists, the number of children per 100 of population was less than 16, and it was 18.74 for the Muslims, which was about less than 3 more. In 2011 is 13.1 for Indian religions, and it is 16.43 for the Muslims. The gap is more than 3 children. And this has been only rising. This has not been getting bridged. Per 100 of population, how many of them are children of age 0 to 6? Now, if I look at this for different states, the difference becomes very striking. In India, there are 13 children in the Indian religionists per 100 of population and 16 for the Muslims. In Haryana, it's 12.70 and 21.77. It's about, this is extraordinarily big difference. For Jammu and Kashmir, it is 12.5 and 18. For Assam, it is 12 and 19. West Bengal is 10 and 15. Kerala, which is supposed to be a very advanced state, there the number of children is very low. It is 9 for the Indian religionists, and it is low for the Muslims also. It is 14.4, but the difference is about 6 children. Here it is in Nagaland, but these are small numbers, so let's not. The number of people there is small. So this, the gap between the growth of the Muslim population and that of the Indian religions doesn't seem to be bridging, in spite of what the demographers keep telling us, that always happens, at least at this stage, and even amongst the demographically most advanced stage where of Kerala, there also the gap remains very high. This is another piece of data which has become available, that Kerala keeps its records of live births and deaths very well. It is one of the states which keeps its records very well. So I looked at their 2015 data, and in the number of children, number of births in 2015, of the total of number of births in 2015 in Kerala, 43% were Hindu, 41.45% were Muslim, while the population of Muslims was only 26%. So that is the kind of gap you found. Incidentally, this one of the retired DGPs mentioned this in one of his interviews. That this seems to have happened, and he was prosecuted for having said a thing like that. Though he kept saying that this is the government numbers, it's not my numbers. This is the similar number for Jammu and Kashmir. Oh, it can be done easily, because if you just take half of them are women, okay, it can be done. I didn't want to do TFR. I don't want to. Okay, but in TFR, if you want to go by that, most of the very large number of the Indian state, the TFR is below 2.1 now for the Indian religionists, which is below the replacement rate. Okay, we'll discuss this. Now, share of different communities in live births in J&K. This is not their birth and death registers wouldn't be that good. This is from the census. Census gives the number of births that happened the previous year. When they do the census, they also give the number of births that happened the previous year. So this I was surprised what is happening there, because in 2001, the number of births, live births, of the Hindus were 47,000 and of Muslims 1,16,000. In 2011, it is not 2011, the year before 2011, the number given in 2011 census. The number of live births were 55,000 amongst the Hindus, the growth of about 17%, and number of births of Muslims was 2,13,000 to 14,000, a growth of 84%. This, I don't know how these things happen. This means a campaign of some kind, but our journalistic instincts are not sharp enough to pick up these things and follow. This is a map of the Muslims and Christians in India. So Muslims are concentrated in this Jammu, this Kashmir, and then this will be Western UP from this onwards. All this eastern belt, including West Bengal, and crossing over into Assam. That's where the Muslims are, including this Kachar area. This district-wise, this is a dynamic map. These actual numbers is not there. And Christians are here. They are in the central India, in the area around Ranchi, but also, we'll talk about it, also in Odisha, Kandhamal and Gajpati area in large numbers. And of course, Christians are there in Kerala and Kanyakumari, part of it. And this will be Goa. And this is South Kannada districts, which is also becoming Mangalore, and that area is becoming. But we'll go, I'm just showing an overview. We will go region by region to the extent we can find time. But to give an idea of the total 17.22 crore Muslims in India, 9.62 crores are in that eastern belt of UP, Bihar, Assam, West Bengal, Jharkhand. And 4.2 crores are in Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, and about 1 crore in Jammu and Kashmir. Of the total, so you can see that the middle India, central India is, there are not many Muslims in that area. There were many Muslims in the northwest and northern areas, which is because of the partition they have. Total Christians counted in 2011 are 2.78 crores, of which of whom Northeast has 0.78 crores. Tamil Nadu and Kerala have 1 crore, and the central India, where they have invested a great deal of effort, has only 0.37 crore. if the count is correct. And this is a very sore point amongst the world Christians, that we have invested so much. But this is a very sore point amongst them, that we have invested great amount of resources in this region to convert the tribals of central India, and they do not seem to have agreed. This is Jammu and Kashmir. So of course Kashmir Valley is 96% Muslim, and Jammu also is 33% Muslim. And this is what is valley. Well, there were some Hindus in the valley before all this event happened, and their numbers were rising, Hindus and Sikhs. After the current, from around 81 onwards, the number of Muslims, Hindus and Sikhs there has been declining very sharply. There's no question of growth. But the number of Muslims in the Jammu region has been rising very systematically over the last 2-3 decades, and now they form about 1/3 of the population of Jammu. This is in fact, this is only to show that there are really no Hindus left in Kashmir Valley. The census has counted this 168,000 Hindus in the valley, out of which in this 168,000 there are only 15,000 women and only 4,000 or 5,000 children. So and out of 168,000, 156,000 are illiterates, 148,000 are workers. So what this indicates is there are really no Hindu families in valley left. There are no women, almost no children. It's only people, Hindus who have employed there, gone to work there, that they are being counted. And this is the usual graph of this. So this is all adult males that you see. You don't see any women, and you don't see any children. You don't see any old men amongst the Hindus of valley. So valley has been cleansed. There's no, there's numbers that the census shows is number of workers there gone from outside. There's no Hindus there. Next I will, this is Haryana, and what I want you to concentrate is only on this line, that Muslims in Haryana is of course one of the places which faced the brunt of partition, like Punjab, and nearly all the Muslims had to leave from Haryana, except in the Mewat district. There was some decision that the southern part of Haryana, south of Delhi, will not allow the transfer of populations. But in 71 there were only 4% Muslims in Haryana. There were 4% in 81 also. They started rising, and between 81 and 2001 they've gone up from 4% to 7%. Now this is something which our sociologists should study, that this is a small region. And till 81 there's nothing happening there. And suddenly there's this kind of growth. And this is, I think, a glaring enough sociological and demographic fact to be studied systematically by our great institutions. Now look at the Mewat district, which has been, it was part of Gurgaon, Mewat district, which in 81, I think, or 2001. In 2003, it was separated as a separate Muslim majority district. 81, this district had 66% population of Muslims. In 3 decades, the district has 79% population of Muslims. And now this, if it happens by natural growth, it will be very interesting. But there's something more than natural growth happening there. And what worries me, what pains me is that why don't we invest so much in these universities and social scientists and social scholars? I know people working on Mewat. They look at all aspects of Mewat. about the poverty of Muslims, about the illiteracy of Muslims, about the historical iniquity that has been visited upon them. All kinds of papers I see. But I don't see any paper on what is happening to the religious demography of this region and how is it proceeding, what are the details of it, what is happening at the macro level, how many Hindus have left, Hindu houses are vacant in Firozpur Jirka, for example. And those are the kind of questions which need to be studied, because this is not something small that has happened before our eyes and we just want to ignore it. After Haryana, that map I showed, the major concentrations is the western UP. I will not define that area. This is from Saharanpur to Meerut area of western UP. There were 15% Muslims in this area, 41. There was not much transfer from this area, transfer of population of this area. From 14.53, they came to 14.28% in 51. Because of partition. But you should have expected a much larger change. They just stuck on. They asked for partition. This was one of the regions from which the demand of the partition would have been most intense. But they didn't go. And there was not much change up to 71, not even up to. After 81, you see their numbers rising from 16% to 19%, proportion rising in just about 3 decades. So actually, effects of partitions on the Muslim community do persist for about 3 decades. It makes them, actually it was traumatic experience for them also. For those who were left here, it was equally traumatic for Hindus who came from there. But even for those Muslims who were left behind, their best of their men would have left. Their leaders would be no more here. And it had become a community in distress. But that seems to have passed by 1981. And you see it in figures. Now in this area of Uttar Pradesh, I have done this, I think this is so many districts, all these now have more than 30% Muslims. Some of these have, this Rampur is now a Muslim majority district. But if you go taluk wise, which also I have done somewhere, then there will be very many tehsils which now are Muslim majority in this area. So that was whole of UP, but if I take this small pocket of only these districts, then the Muslim growth in this is from 29% to 40% in this. And this also all seems to have happened after 1981, from 33 to 40, they are coming in this area. There's an eastern UP pocket around Bajaj, Saraswati, Balrampur, Siddharthnagar, which you can see in that map. But that seems to be now more contained. The growth is more contained there. Uttarakhand is very interesting, that Uttarakhand was formed in 1991 or 2001. In 1991 there were 10% Muslims, 2001 it became 12%, 2011 it became 14%. And if you look at the Kumaon region alone, they were continuously rising after 71. They were 10% in 2001 and 12%. So Kumaon region from 61 to 2011, more than doubling of their. And Udham Singh Nagar district in the last decade itself, it's acquired about 2 percentage point extra. So this Haridwar, Dehradun, Udham Singh Nagar and some districts above that, the Muslim presence is extremely intense. This anyway is a continuation of the belt I was talking about. This Haridwar is a continuation of that belt. This is This is not about UP, we'll come about UP, but in general, in India, Muslims are more urban than rural, in general, not everywhere. If you take India as a whole, the Hindus are 29%, of the Hindu population, 29% is urban. Of the Muslim population, 40% is urban. And of Christian population, 40% is urban. In Rajasthan, the urban ratio of Muslims is much higher, nearly half of them are urban. Compared to about 22% Muslims. Same in UP, about 18% UP Hindus are urban, but 37% of the Muslims are urban. There is a concentration of Muslims. In Chhattisgarh, 22% is Hindus are urban, and nearly 70% of the Muslims are urban. In West Bengal and Assam, Muslims are more rural than urban, actually, in both of them, because we know what in those areas it is the peasantry which is Muslim. In these areas, the artisans and the traders who are Muslims. But in West UP, it will be both peasantry and artisans and traders. So I showed you that there is a higher presence of Muslims in the urban areas. In UP, you can see it in UP, in Maharashtra, everywhere else, you can see in the number of towns that are Muslim majority. In West UP alone, that pocket I was saying, there are 11 towns, 11 census towns, where Muslims are more than 90%. And there are another 20 where Muslims are 80 to 90%. Another 24 where they're 70 to 80%. In all, there are 103 towns out of total of 154 where Muslims are a majority.
What is the definition of town here?
Town is census town.
Is it 10,000 population or what? 25,000?
No, there is not such a simple population. It also counts the ratio of people who are dependent on agriculture. And the change in towns is much sharper than the total change that I was talking about. In Kairana, for example, about which we heard much, in 71 there were 59% Muslims, and now they are 80%, 81%. In Kandra there were 51%, and now they are 70%. And this is only 4 decades. Devdam, they were 59% and 70%. Purkaz, it is a small town near Saharanpur, 48% to 76%. Bagpat from 41 to 60%. In these towns, the growth of Muslims seems extremely high. And this not only in UP, there will be several towns of Karnataka, several towns of Maharashtra, where you see extraordinary growth of Muslims in towns. In Madhya Pradesh. Now we come to Bihar. And Bihar I want to talk about, because in Bihar there were 15% Muslims, they became 12% in 51, and they have been slowly rising, 17% now they are there. But here you don't see that explosive growth that you see in parts of UP. And I showed you the gap between the Muslim growth and the Indian religious growth. Here in Bihar, you see the gap between the growth rate of Muslims and Indian religious has really narrowed. This is one of the unusual places. It was very wide. It was very wide. It was wide even in this year particularly, in 2001, you see a narrowing of the gap. In fact, in Bihar you see a large number of all these places where Muslims have grown, all these pink ones, where Muslims have grown slower than Hindus during the last decade. Now I can speculate on the reason that you were asking. My feeling is, I may be wrong, that this is happening. This is a kind of Hindu reaction or Hindu resurgence In the previous census, you saw it happening in the region around Gorakhpur, where the Muslims were actually declining. Gorakhpur, Devariya, that region. And this census, you see it happening in a very large part of Bihar, where the share of Muslims is actually coming down. The growth rate is lower than that of... this is in much of Bihar, but not in this area. This Kishanganj, Purnia, Katiyar, which is their area of concentration, there they have grown faster than the... So I prefer to see it is some kind of Hindu reaction to this, what is going on, some Hindu resurgence. So this I'm just saying that there seems to be a restoration of balance in 15 districts, in as many as 15 districts of Bihar. Hindu growth is higher than that of the Muslims during the last decade. This is the first time I'm seeing such a vast area where Hindus have grown faster than... But again, this is something based on all India data. It always requires micro-level studies to confirm these things. And that micro-level studies should be the responsibility of institutions. But what was Purnia region, there, as I said, there's no let-up. Purnia is one area, Purnia now, which is divided into several districts. It is a single Purnia region. There were 41% Muslims there. They became 32% in 51. And they went up to 37, 61 already. After that, the growth has been continuous. But in 2001, 2011, they have gained more than 1.5 percentage points. So the phenomena, as I said, of higher growth of Hindus compared to Muslims is not true about regions where they are in a high concentration, where the Muslims are in Jharkhand. There were only 8% Muslims, 8.3 in 51 also. They have now become 14.5, which is not small change. It is a large change. Particularly in the Santhal Pargana region, which again is now divided into various districts, the Muslims have gone from 9.4% in 51 to 22.7% in 2011. But this is some serious, this region, because here you start coming to the chicken neck area where there is very large explosive growth. This is the beginning of the chicken neck area. So then you come to West Bengal. Whole of West Bengal, you have gone from 19% to 27%. And if you take the belt of Dinajpur, Malda, Murshidabad, the growth is from, in Dinajpur, from 29% to 41%, in Malda from 37 to 51%, Murshidabad from 55 to 66%, Birbhum from 26 to 37. So this is from 40 to 52%. This is the continuation of the chicken belt. It's all the border of Bangladesh that where we are seeing this. So this is explosive actually. So if I take this Purnia, Santhal Pargana, Dinajpur, Murshidabad belt together, which then there were 37% in 41, 30% in 51, and now they are 45%. This is very large change. So this area, West Bengal, that region which goes next to Bangladesh, and this the Purnia area, and this then through Bangladesh goes into continuously with the Assam. I think this is now as a whole Muslim majority, and this of course this part around is of course Christian majority. So this what is called the Purvanchal of India, there Hindus or Indian religionists are already in a majority, in a minority. In fact, I showed this when I did this in 2001 to a very senior political scientist. And he looked at it, he got very worried. He says that when something like this happens, you see a map of this kind, then very strong civilizations, very capable civilizations will find it very difficult to maintain this area within their domain. And we are not a strong civilization as of now. Then we show you Assam. There were 15% Muslims in 1901. They're 34% now. Assam, of course, from 15% to 25% it has happened between 1900 and 1941. This is the systematic movement of peasantry from parts of what is now Bangladesh into Gwalpara region of Assam that the British organized. And in fact, they gave them lands. In fact, every census report of that period gives numbers of people brought and the amount of land distributed. That period. After 41, you see this number remains steady up to 71, and also to an extent up to 71 certainly. It is 25%, 25% even in 71. But then it starts rising. It becomes 26 in 81, 28.4 in 91, 30.92 2001, and 34% now. So this 81, 71, 81 seems to be a transition point for the Muslims in India. What caused it? I think both historians and sociologists should study. Assam now, of course, this region is largely Muslim majority, and so is this region. All these white ones are majority. So this, and this is the most fertile part of both. This is the Barak Valley, and this is the Brahmaputra Valley part, the most fertile parts of it. So this is the main region which has now become Muslim. Gwalpara, Kamrup, Darang, Nagaon. If we look at the total, there were 212,000 Muslims there. Now it is about 84 lakh Muslims in that region alone. Percentage, there were 14% in 1901 and there are 44% now. And as I said, from 41 to 31% is already in 41. Then it remains there up to 71. And then you go to 45% in this last few decades. Similar things are happening in Kachar, where Kachar was sufficiently Muslim in 1901 also, and it became 42%. It had declined to 38%, and about 10 percentage points they have gained in the since independence. Now let's come to we have this belt. As I said, I have already talked. If I take whole of the eastern belt, now the Muslims are 45% there, and if you add the Christians there, that part is the Indian religions are actually in a manner. In the northeast, it's not the Muslims, it's the Christians who have taken over the northeast. If Arunachal Pradesh still looks somewhat less populated by Muslims, partly it is because the total by Christians, partly it is because Arunachal Pradesh is very scarcely populated. That's why this map is looking like that. But let me show you the numbers. If I take whole of northeast, excluding Assam and Tripura, the hill areas of ourselves, there were only 2.68% Christians in 1901, gone up to 30.66% the way the counting was done in 1931. In 41, census was 1.9% Christians in whole of northeast. In 51, you counted 31%, and now they have gone to 63%. But the fact remains that much of the increase is between 30, even if you take this to the number, much of the increase is at the eve of the partition, at the eve of independence or after independence. There's the first, and then it keeps rising. Meghalaya, they were 15% in 31, almost none in 41, became 25%, 51, and then slowly they have been rising. They have become 75%. So Meghalaya is one state which is not become fully, where the scheduled tribes have not become fully Christian yet. Part of its reason is there are tribes within the Khasis, within that area, who are insistent on not becoming Christian, but even then the percentage of Christians keeps rising from decade to decade. There are 47% in 71, 53% in 81, 64% in 91, 70% in 2001, and 70. And actually, again, this is something which should be studied by Indian sociologists. The situation of non-Christian tribes in Meghalaya is something which is crying to be studied in detail at micro level. Mizoram was one state where Christianity came early, partly because the education budget of Mizoram was handed over to the church by the British. So this is here in 31, nearly 50% were counted as Christian. And 41, of course, there was hardly any. In 51, already by the time of independence, most of the scheduled tribes of Mizoram had been converted. And after that, there is some decline. This decline is largely because outsiders come in, and also because there is this, in the southern part of Mizoram, these districts are Buddhist districts. Chakmas are there. Chakmas came. Manipur, of course, is two state parts. There is the valley and there are the hill districts around it. And valley is, of course, much more populated than the hill districts. So that is why in 51 there were only 11% Christians, and even now there are 41%. But of the ST population, 97% are Christians. 97% are Christians. So Manipur, to the extent it is possible, has been completely converted. Manipur also has fairly large number of Muslims, and there has been continuous competition between this Panagal Meiteis and Meiteis, that the regular Meiteis and the Muslim Meiteis. And I was showing somebody that the Minorities Welfare Minister of India gives separate grants for the Muslim Meiteis of the Pangal Muslims. Pangal. How do you pronounce it? But there is separate grant from the government of India for the welfare of Pangals. Nagaland was only 12% in 31. So the serious Christianization started after independence, 46%, 51. And then it took some time for Nagaland to become Christian, fully Christian. Now, of course, 99% of the Naga scheduled tribes are Christian. Arunachal Pradesh is the is in state of the most concern, because we felt that Arunachal Pradesh is a region which we have saved. We have not allowed the church to penetrate into that area, and that was true up to 81, until up to the time that Arunachal was NEFA and was ruled not as a civilian state. It was largely free, and after that you can see it's 4 to 10, 10 to 18, 18 to 30 every decade. But this 30 is a very large number, because of the ST population, 41% are now Christian. Of the Nisi, Naishis, which are the main tribes of politically most strong tribes, 64% are Christians. Of the Tangsa, about 60% are Christians. In the eastern part, in Tirap region, 90%, 5% of the Vanchos are not Christian. And 67% of the Noctes in that area are Christian. Adis who are supposed to not easily convertible, now a quarter of the Adis are Christian. These nations are the Donipolos. They are the large. In fact, large amount of conversion is from people who call themselves Donipolo. Okay, I can show that as the number of Christian rises, the number of Donipolo declines. You can show from that. Okay, this is very strange because this is something which we all knew. There's likely to happen, then we should make our best effort not to happen. I think our best effort has not to prove to be good enough. And now only scheduled tribes left there as Hindus are Mishmis who will never convert, and there are the Mompas who are and Kamtis. Daflas are Nishis. In fact, they don't like that word. Dafla is considered a derogatory word. Daflas have converted. So Kamtas, those who are Buddhists, they have not converted in any large numbers. And of this Teju area, the Mishmis of the Dibang Valley and Teju area, the Lohit area, they have not converted. But the rest are, I think, it's total now. And another, by next census, total. So, Arunachal Pradesh shouldn't have happened, but the current census shows. In fact, I went to Arunachal Pradesh, and the stories I have heard are not worth listening to. Now, let's quickly look at the other Christian areas. So, the Christians outside Northeast, this I believe is, this is Simdega. So, this was what was Ranchi. Simdega is the center of Ranchi. And Simdega now has been separated from Ranchi. It's a Christian majority district with 51% Christians. But this is an older Christian concentration. The rate of growth in Ranchi is not very high, except that we have separated districts which are Christian majority. Besides that, there's not high. Below that, then there is the Sundargarh and the Sambalpur region, where also there was some Christianity from earlier times. Earlier times means from the time of the British. But this area didn't have Christians. This is Fulbani, Bodh, Kandmal, Gajpati. Now this separated Gajpati district now is, I think, 47%. Gajpati is 40% nearly. Right? And Kandmal is about 30% Christian. So this is perhaps amongst the recent times, this is the area where maximum success Christian conversion has achieved. And this is continuing, this continuously rising. And this will lead to this actually not lead to, but it's already led to this becoming a continuous belt from Chhattisgarh to the Odisha, the central belt of Christian influence. Then Santhal Pargana is the other area above that, where the Christians have had fairly good success, 1.5%, 71 to 4.2% now. In this area, Muslims also have a good rate of growth. In this Ranchi, Raigad, Sundargarh pocket that I was talking about, 51 there were 1.5 Raigad. This Raigad, it was only 1.51%, and they're 10% now. In Ranchi, they were 10% and about 15% now. In Sundargarh, also from about 9.94% to 18.39%. But much of the growth is earlier growth, except very recent one in Sundargarh in the last decade. This Kandamal is the most. In 71, they were 10%, in 81, 9%, and now they are 20%. In Gajpati, they were 11%, and now they are 38%. This is the area where the maximum conversion has taken place in recent times. Andhra Pradesh, there is much Christianity in this. In 71, there was much Christianity in Andhra Pradesh counted. There were a total 14 lakh or nearly 15 lakh Christians counted in what is now Andhra Pradesh, and about 3 lakh Christians counted in what is now Telangana. Many of the Christians, a large percentage of them were in this richest part of, I think this may be the most fertile part of not only Andhra Pradesh, but of India, is the Godavari. And most of them were here. Most of them were here in the coastal region. But what is interesting about Andhra Pradesh, this is 71. In 2011, you see the number going down to from about 15 lakhs to 6.8 lakhs. And in Telangana, there is slight rise, but if you put them together, there will still be only about 15 lakhs compared to about 20 lakhs at that time. And in these areas, you see the numbers going down. This is a very peculiar, in 71 there is a rise, and after that there is continuous decline. So these are the districts where in Andhra composite, 71 the Christians became 4.19%, and 2001 they are only 1.3%. In West Godavari they became 7.3%, and now they are 2.77%. In Krishna they became 10.85%. In Guntur they became 14.6%, and there are only 1.8% now. So you see everywhere this kind of thing. And we analyzed it a little, and what we found is that if you put the percentage of Christians and the percentage of scheduled caste together and add, then in composite Andhra there was 17.8% Christians and scheduled caste together. In 61, in 71, 81, 91, 2001, that 18% less than is static. Is only variation in the SC and the. So what seems to be happening in very obviously in Andhra Pradesh is that the scheduled castes are converted, once recorded as converted, and then they are not recorded in the census any further. They are recorded as scheduled caste. Once again, here it is very obvious, and you can see it district wise district. Say this is Guntur district. There were in 61 5.24% scheduled caste and 30.4% Christians, and total becoming a little less than 90%. And now there are 20% scheduled caste and 1.8% Christians. So there is a fungibility between the other districts, also similar, I think now. In Tamil Nadu is a state where there are about 6% Christians and 6% Muslims. They were, in 51, they were almost the same, 4.7% Christians and 4.79%. Both have been rising. And Muslims have reached near 6%, and Christians have also reached near 6%. So if you look at the map of Tamil Nadu, then you see Christians almost everywhere. Some presence of theirs everywhere, but particularly in Kanyakumari and all of this southern coastal area, but particularly Kanyakumari, Tirunelveli, Thoothukudi, where the church is very strong. Kanyakumari, the rate of growth of theirs has been very high. They were 30% 21, 33% 31. But in the last 3-4 decades, 81 is 39%, 91 is 42%, 2001 is 44%, and 2011 is nearly 47%. Kanyakumari will become Christian majority is perhaps already Christian majority. And if you go to that beautiful coast where the temple of Kanyakumari is there, is a very strategically located temple. You should go and see. It is the Devi looking across the sea and looking at everybody who's coming. That coast is all now, you see only church spires. No, because Kanyakumari will be along that, what is the district headquarters of Kanyakumari? You remember the name? I keep Nagarkoil. So Nagarkoil is not ours, as you're saying. Similarly, Muslims are also almost everywhere, but much more in Vellore, which was, of course, one of their Rajdhanis, and in Nilgiris, and in Ramnathpuram. Much of the news that you get about problems between Muslims and Christians, Muslims and Hindus, and Muslim aggressiveness, that comes from this region and from Vellore. Kerala is also 26% Muslim and 18% Christian. Hindus there are, Indian religions are 55%. But you should look at this graph. In 1901, there were 17% Muslims. In 51, also there were 17%. In 61, also they were about the same. And then they start growing. And between 71 and 2011, it is a growth of 7 percentage points. And Christians were about 14% in 1901. They were growing up to 61. Between this, they got 8 percentage points again. And after that, they have been slightly declining. So the first half of the century belonged to the Christians, and the second half of the century belonged to the Muslims. Indian religions kept declining throughout. And so they have come down from 70% to 55%. The loss of about 15 percentage points, half they have lost to the Christians, half they have lost to the Muslims. And Muslims and Christians have divided more or less Kerala between them. This is the Muslim Kerala, though they're everywhere, but this is the northern part, and this is the Christian Kerala. Kottayam is, of course, the center of Christians in Kerala. Christians in Kerala. And this is another way of showing the same thing. You see the Muslims down and the Christians down there. But I want to show this. Like Mewat, Malappuram was carved out as a separate district, I think in 71. Then there were 63% Muslims there, 64%. And after that, it has been continuously rising, the district. It has become 70% now. This I want to show a little more. Kerala, as we know, is a literate state, is an advanced state. So for the Hindus, if you look at the literacy, is 93.5%, but is also 93.3% for Muslims, and it is 96.5% for Christians. But so you don't see much difference between the Muslims and Hindus in these parameters. Work participation rate, if you look at, then of course Muslim women have much lower work participation rate. That's everywhere. Urban ratio also, Muslims have somewhat higher than the Hindus. But if you look at the children per 100, Hindus have less than 9, Muslims have, and Christians have almost the same as Hindus. Muslims have 14.4. So this talk about that it is the literacy, it is the urbanization, it is which affects the fertility behavior, doesn't seem to be borne out in Kerala. It doesn't seem to be borne out in fact, any of the states of India, south of Narmada, in all of them, women literacy amongst Muslims is higher than the Hindus, and fertility of Muslims is also higher than the Hindus. These are the age pyramids of Christians, Hindus, and Muslims. As you see, I showed you all of them in terms of literacy at the same point, but in terms of the reproductive behavior, Christians now already are looking like an advanced population, population advanced on the, fairly advanced on the population curve. So the most of this becoming state, and this pyramid is becoming almost like cylindrical, and soon you will have many more older men than below. For the Hindus also, it's not like this, but it's also very similar. Very similar. But Muslims, it will be not very different than what you will see in Haryana. Haryana also will be very similar age pyramid of a society having much larger number of children and much fewer in the middle and the higher ages. Dakshin Kannada is another place where Muslims are rising. They have gone up because this is the continuation of the northern Kerala. That's why I'm pointing out. They have gone up from 9% to 18%. This is the coastal region. Goa also, there's a much growth of Muslims from 1.6. This is continuation of Dakshin Kannada anyway. Say they've gone up from 1.61% to 8.33%. So I come back to this map where some parts of this map are no more India, and they have become outside the reach of the Indian religionists. And this border belt is now having Muslim concentration in very many parts. And if you go to the near border, the concentration is much higher. And if you start from here and go eastwards, then here the Indian religionists are already less than 50%. And similarly, this coastal region of Kerala and going up to Dakshin Kannada and Goa, the Muslims and Christians together constitute a fairly large proportion of the population, including Kanyakumari here. There's another way to look at. I'm just closing. Let me state this as I've written. Notwithstanding the continuing erosion of the share of Indian religions in specific pockets and regions, which are not small, lying on the northern, eastern, northeastern, southwestern borders of Indian Union, much of the country has remained largely immune to advance of Christianity and Islam. I think that should be granted. That should be granted. And which is in a way an achievement. Africa has not been able to do it. Philippines was conquered. So yeah, South Korea is slightly different. Philippines is. Indian religionists have maintained a dominant presence in almost all of northwestern, western, central, and southern parts of Indian Union. These parts together comprise nearly 2/3 of the area and 3/5 of the population of Indian Union. In this vast region, Indian religionists have shown great vitality. In some parts of the region, they have even begun to restore the imbalance caused by the relatively higher growth of Muslims and Christians. Such vitality, however, has not helped them in defending their presence on the borders of the country, where the efforts of the society to be effective necessarily need the vigilance and support of a state committed to protecting and preserving the civilizational identity, pride, and genius of the nation. We have so far failed to fashion such a state for ourselves. Thank you.